I always thought the worst pain a parent could feel was losing a child. I was wrong. The worst pain is realizing your child chose to lose you. I found that out the day I called my daughter to ask what time the wedding dinner was, and she laughed, a cold, brittle sound I barely recognized. "Oh, Dad, we had it a week before. Didn't anyone tell you?" My heart stopped. I gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles went white. I'd spent months waiting for this day, picturing myself walking her down the aisle, raising a toast, watching her start a new life. Instead, I was standing in my empty kitchen, listening to my only child tell me I'd already missed the most important moment of her life, and she hadn't even bothered to invite me. If you've ever felt the sting of being left out by your own family, or if you know the ache of being forgotten by the people you love most, please subscribe, like, and share your story in the comments. Your support means more than you know, and you might help someone else who's living through the same heartbreak. I tried to keep my voice steady, but it cracked anyway. You had the wedding dinner without me. There was a pause, then a sigh. Dad, it was just easier this way. You know how things have been between us. I didn't want any drama. I stared at the faded photograph of her on my fridge, her first day of school, missing front teeth, eyes shining with trust. Now her voice was distant, almost bored. Besides, Mark's family wanted something small. We just did it last week. It was nice. Nice, as if I were a neighbor, not her father. As if decades of bedtime stories, scraped knees and late-night talks could be erased with a single casual sentence. I hung up before she could say anything else. My hands shook as I set the phone down. The silence in the house was deafening. I walked from room to room, every corner filled with memories, her laugh, to echoing down the hallway, the smell of her favorite cookies baking in the oven, the sound of her feet running up the stairs. All of it felt like a cruel joke now. A life I'd built for someone who no longer wanted me in it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation we'd had over the past year. The distance had started small. A missed call here, a short reply there. But I'd never imagined it would end like this. I thought about the last time we'd spoken in person, the argument about her fiancé, the way she'd looked at me like I was a stranger. I'd told myself it was just a phase, that she'd come around. I was wrong. The next morning, I drove past the church where I'd always imagined her wedding would be. The parking lot was empty, the doors locked. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel, fighting the urge to scream. I thought about calling her again, begging for an explanation, but pride held me back. I'd already been humiliated once. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of hearing me beg. Instead, I went home and started packing up the box of wedding gifts I'd spent months collecting. Family heirlooms, a quilt her grandmother had made, a set of silver candlesticks I'd saved for her since she was a child. I wrapped each item carefully, my hands trembling with anger and grief. When the box was full, I taped it shut and set it by the door. I didn't know what I was going to do with it, but I knew one thing: I wasn't going to let her take anything else from me. Days passed in a blur. Friends called, asking about the wedding, wanting to see pictures. I lied, telling them it was beautiful, that I was proud. The truth was too humiliating to share. I stopped answering the phone, stopped checking my email. I went through the motions of daily life, but everything felt hollow. The world had moved on, and I was stuck in a loop of regret and disbelief. Then, a week later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, just my name written in her handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a single page, covered in neat, careful script. Dad, I'm sorry you found out this way. I just couldn't handle the stress. Mark's family wanted something private, and I didn't want to fight anymore. I hope you can forgive me. Love, Emily. No explanation, no apology for the years we'd shared, the sacrifices I'd made. Just a request for forgiveness, as if that would erase the pain. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the letter, rage and sorrow warring inside me. I thought about all the times I'd put her first, all the dreams I'd had for her future. I realized in that moment that I'd spent my whole life giving, hoping it would be enough to keep her close. But love without boundaries isn't love. It's surrender. And I was done surrendering. The days after Emily's letter felt like living in a fog. I went through the motions. Coffee in the morning, a walk around the block, staring at the television without seeing a thing. Every time the phone rang, my heart leapt, hoping it was her, hoping she'd realized what she'd done. But it was always someone else, someone who didn't know the truth. Someone who still thought I was the proud father of the bride. I started avoiding people, ducking out of conversations, making excuses to stay home. The shame was suffocating. I kept thinking about that box of wedding gifts by the door. Each item inside was a piece of our family's history, a symbol of love and trust passed down through generations. I'd imagined Emily unwrapping them on her wedding day, her eyes lighting up with gratitude. Now the thought of her even touching those things made my skin crawl. I couldn't bear the idea of her taking another piece of me, not after what she'd done. One afternoon, I got a call from my sister, Linda. She'd heard about the wedding from a friend of a friend. "Why didn't you tell me, Tom?" she asked, her voice tight with concern. I hesitated, the words catching in my throat. "I wasn't invited," I finally admitted. There was a long silence on the other end. "She didn't invite her own father," Linda whispered, disbelief and anger mingling in her tone. "What the hell is wrong with her?" I didn't have an answer. I just sat there, feeling the old wounds split open again. Linda didn't let it go. She called Emily, demanding an explanation. The conversation was short and brutal. Emily told her it was none of her business, that she wanted a drama-free wedding, that I was too difficult, too old-fashioned, too much. Linda called me back, furious. "She's lost her mind, Tom. Don't you dare blame yourself for this. She's the one who should be ashamed." Her words were a balm, but they couldn't erase the ache in my chest. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the box of gifts. I thought about all the times I'd bailed Emily out, helping with rent, paying off her car, covering her college loans. I'd always told myself it was what a good father did. But now I saw the pattern for what it was. I'd taught her that my love was unconditional, that she could take and never have to give anything back. I realized I'd been complicit in my own heartbreak. The next morning, I made a decision. I loaded the box of gifts into my car and drove to the local women's shelter. The director, a kind woman named Maria, listened as I explained. "These were meant for my daughter's wedding," I said, my voice trembling. "But I think someone else needs them more." She smiled, her eyes shining with understanding. "Thank you, Tom. You have no idea how much this will mean to the women here." As I handed over the box, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time since Emily's call, I felt like I was taking control of my own story. Word spread quickly. Friends and neighbors started reaching out, some with sympathy, others with their own stories of family betrayal. I was shocked by how many people had been through something similar. Parents cut off by their children, siblings estranged over petty arguments, families torn apart by pride and misunderstanding. The more I listened, the more I realized I wasn't alone. My pain was part of a much larger tapestry, woven from the threads of love and loss that connect us all. But Emily wasn't finished. A week after I donated the gifts, I got a message from her. "Dad, did you send the quilt? Mark's mum said she never got it." I stared at the screen, disbelief turning to anger. No apology, no acknowledgement of what she'd done. Just another demand, another expectation that I would keep giving, no matter how she treated me. I took a deep breath and replied, "No, Emily. I gave it to someone who needed it." Her response was instant. "How could you? That was supposed to be mine." I didn't answer. I turned off my phone and sat in the quiet, letting the anger wash over me. That night, I wrote Emily a letter. I told her how much she'd hurt me, how her choices had consequences, how love wasn't a one-way street. I told her I hoped she found happiness, but that I couldn't keep sacrificing my own dignity for her approval. I sealed the letter and put it in the mail, unsure if she'd ever read it, unsure if it would make any difference. But I knew I had to say it, for myself, if for no one else. The days grew longer, the ache in my chest slowly fading to a dull throb. I started volunteering at the shelter, helping Maria with repairs and odd jobs. The women there welcomed me with open arms, their gratitude a balm for my wounded heart. I found purpose in their stories, strength in their resilience. I realized that family isn't always blood. It's the people who show up when you need them, the ones who see your pain and choose to stay. But the story wasn't over. One evening, as I was leaving the shelter, I saw Emily standing by my car. She looked smaller than I remembered, her eyes red from crying. "Dad, can we talk?" she whispered. My heart pounded in my chest, a mix of hope and fear. I nodded, unsure of what would come next. Emily stood in the fading light, her arms wrapped around herself as if she could hold her world together by sheer force of will. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I could see the struggle in her eyes, the pride, the regret, the fear of what she might hear if she let me speak first. Finally, she broke the silence. "I know you're angry," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "but I didn't know what else to do. Mark's family, they wanted things their way. I just wanted everyone to get along." I studied her face, searching for the daughter I'd raised. I saw flashes of the little girl who used to run to me after a nightmare, who'd beg for one more story before bed. But I also saw the woman who'd shut me out, who'd chosen convenience over connection, who'd let others decide who belonged in her life. "You could have told me," I said quietly. "You could have trusted me enough to let me in, even if it was messy." She looked away, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I was scared, Dad. I thought you'd be disappointed. I thought you'd make a scene or say something to Mark's parents. I didn't want to deal with it." The words stung, but they also rang true. I'd always been outspoken, always worn my heart on my sleeve. Maybe I'd made it too easy for her to believe that my love came with conditions. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Emily, I would have been proud of you no matter what. I just wanted to be there. I wanted to see you happy. But you didn't even give me the chance. She wiped her eyes. Her shoulder was shaking. I know, I messed up. I thought I was protecting myself, but I ended up hurting you. I'm sorry, Dad. I really am. For a long moment, I let the apology hang in the air. I wanted to forgive her, to wrap her in my arms and pretend none of this had happened. But forgiveness isn't forgetting, and love isn't blind. I appreciate you saying that, I said finally, but things can't go back to the way they were. Trust takes time to rebuild. You have to want me in your life, not just expect me to show up when it's convenient. She nodded, her face crumpling. I do want you, Dad. I don't know how to fix this. I thought about all the years I'd spent trying to fix things for her. Patching up scraped knees, smoothing over arguments, paying bills she couldn't handle. Maybe it was time to let her figure it out on her own. You start by being honest, I said. You start by showing up, even when it's hard. We stood there in the parking lot, the silence between us heavy but not hopeless. She reached out, hesitated, then took my hand. Will you come over for dinner, just you and me? No Mark, no drama. I want to talk, really talk. I hesitated, the old ache in my chest flaring up, but I saw the sincerity in her eyes, the vulnerability she'd hidden for so long. All right, I said, but this time I want to know when dinner is. She laughed, a real laugh, not the brittle sound from the phone. For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this was the beginning of something new, something honest. Maybe we could build a relationship on truth, not obligation. That night, I sat at home, replaying the conversation in my mind. I thought about the letter I'd sent, the gifts I'd given away, the boundaries I'd finally set. I realized that loving someone doesn't mean letting them walk all over you. It means standing up for yourself even when it hurts. It means demanding respect, not just affection. The next day, I went to Emily's apartment. She'd cooked my favorite meal, meatloaf and mashed potatoes, just like her mother used to make. We sat at the table, talking about everything and nothing. She told me about her fears, her regrets, her hopes for the future. I listened, really listened, for the first time in a long time. I told her about the shelter, about the women I'd met, about the strength I'd found in helping others. We laughed, we cried, we remembered what it felt like to be a family. But I didn't let my guard down completely. I knew trust would take time. I knew there would be setbacks, moments when the old wounds reopened. But I also knew I was stronger now, more sure of who I was and what I deserved. I wasn't just Emily's father. I was my own person, with my own needs, my own boundaries, my own story. As I left her apartment that night, she hugged me tight. Thank you, Dad, for giving me another chance. I hugged her back, feeling the weight of the past begin to lift. Just don't waste it, I said softly. Second chances are hard to come by. Driving home, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in months. The pain was still there, but it was tempered by hope. I realized that sometimes the hardest thing you can do is let go of the story you thought you were living and start writing a new one. The weeks that followed were a strange mix of old wounds and new beginnings. Emily and I started meeting for dinner every Sunday, just the two of us. At first, the conversations were awkward, full of careful silences and words left unsaid. But slowly, the walls began to come down. She told me about her struggles with Mark's family, how their expectations had suffocated her, how she'd felt trapped between loyalty to them and love for me. I listened, sometimes with anger, sometimes with understanding, always with the ache of a father who'd nearly lost his child for good. One evening, as we sat on her small balcony watching the city lights flicker, Emily turned to me, her eyes shining with tears. "Dad, I know I can't undo what I did. I know I hurt you, but I want you to know. I'm proud to be your daughter. I just wish I'd realized it sooner." The words hit me harder than I expected. For so long, I'd carried the weight of rejection, convinced I'd failed as a father. Now, hearing her say those words, I felt something inside me finally begin to heal. But healing isn't a straight line. There were setbacks, old arguments resurfacing, moments when the pain of the past threatened to pull us under. Sometimes I'd catch myself waiting for the next disappointment, the next cold shoulder, the next reminder that love can be fragile. But each time, Emily showed up. She called when she said she would. She invited me to her new home, introduced me to her friends, even asked for my advice on things that mattered. Slowly, trust began to grow again, watered by honesty and the hard work of forgiveness. Meanwhile, my own life was changing in ways I hadn't expected. Volunteering at the shelter became more than just a distraction. It became a calling. I found purpose in helping others rebuild their lives, in listening to stories of loss and resilience that mirrored my own. The women there taught me that family isn't always about blood, but about the people who stand by you when the world turns cold. I realized I'd spent too long measuring my worth by someone else's approval. Now I was learning to value myself for who I was, not just for what I could give. One Sunday, as Emily and I finished dinner, she handed me a small envelope. "I know it's not much," she said, her voice trembling, "but I wanted you to have this." Inside was a handwritten note. "Thank you for never giving up on me. I love you, Dad." Tucked behind the note was a photograph, Emily as a little girl sitting on my shoulders, both of us laughing under a summer sky. I stared at the picture, tears blurring my vision. For the first time in a long time, I felt whole. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, the note and photo in front of me, and thought about everything that had happened. I realized that forgiveness isn't about forgetting the pain or pretending the betrayal never happened. It's about choosing to move forward, to build something new from the ashes of what was lost. It's about setting boundaries, demanding respect, and loving yourself enough to walk away from those who refuse to honor your worth. I also realized that my story wasn't unique. There are thousands of parents out there, quietly nursing wounds inflicted by the people they love most. There are children who don't know how to say "I'm sorry" and parents who don't know how to let go. But there is hope. Even in the darkest moments, there is a way back, if both sides are willing to do the work. If you're listening to this and you've ever felt the sting of betrayal, the ache of being left out, or the pain of loving someone who doesn't always love you back, know that you are not alone. Your story matters. Your pain is real, and your future is still yours to shape. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched you, please like, subscribe, and share your own experience in the comments. Let's build a community where no one has to face heartbreak alone, and where every act of self-respect is celebrated. To hear more stories of justice, boundaries, and second chances, click on the next video. And remember, sometimes the greatest act of love is learning to love yourself enough to demand the respect you deserve. Sometimes, late at night, I find myself replaying those first moments after Emily's call. The shock, the emptiness, the way the world seemed to tilt on its axis. I remember the silence in my kitchen, the ache in my chest, the disbelief that my own daughter could leave me out of the most important day of her life. For a long time, I thought that pain would define me forever, but as the months passed, I learned something I wish I'd known sooner. Being left out by someone you love doesn't mean you're unlovable. It doesn't erase the years of bedtime stories, scraped knees, or laughter echoing through the house. It doesn't make you less of a parent or less of a person. Sometimes it just means the people we love are fighting battles we can't see, or making choices we'll never understand. I also learned that forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. It doesn't mean forgetting or pretending the hurt never happened. It means choosing to move forward, to let go of the bitterness, and to open your heart to new beginnings, even if they look different than you imagined. It means setting boundaries, demanding respect, and refusing to let someone else's choices steal your peace. If you're listening to this and you've ever felt the sting of being left out, the ache of family betrayal, or the loneliness of loving someone who doesn't always love you back, I want you to know, you are not alone. There are thousands of us out here, quietly rebuilding, quietly healing, quietly learning to say enough. Your story matters, your pain is real, and your future is still yours to shape. I don't know what tomorrow will bring for me and Emily. Maybe we'll find our way back to each other, maybe we won't. But I do know this, I am stronger than I ever thought possible. I am worthy of love, respect, and kindness, not just from others, but from myself. So if you're standing at the edge of your own heartbreak, wondering if you have the strength to keep going, let my story be your answer. You do, you can, and you must. Because sometimes the greatest act of love is learning to love yourself enough to walk away from those who refuse to honor your worth. Thank you for listening. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share your own experience in the comments. Let's build a community where no one has to face heartbreak alone, and where every act of self-respect is celebrated. And remember, sometimes the most powerful revenge is simply living well on your own terms.